So we're looking at from last week, who will lead Oklahoma in receiving yards, and we received 710 votes here. So we appreciate you participating in Marvin Mims, the runaway winner at 80%. Theo Weiss at 10, Jalil Farouk at 8, and Jaden Gibson, the newcomer, with 2%. And then with rushing yardage for the 22 campaign, who will lead the Sooners on the ground, 607 votes. More of a evenly distributed, interesting poll here with Eric Gray just edging out Marcus Major and Javante Barnes, who, of course, could feature, be a featured back and get his distribution of carries as well. Gavin Sawchuk, the talented freshman as well, just coming onto campus here recently at 7%.
Yeah, really interesting here, Mark. I mean, I think the the wide receivers, from that perspective, I think you've got a pretty clear 1 and 2, not only from what the poll represents, but from my perspective as well, as Marvin Mims comes back as certainly your leading receiver, over 700 yards last year. Not a ton of scores. From a touchdown perspective, but still had over 700 yards, and I think, admittedly, probably didn't get as many targets as you would expect. With kind of what happened at the quarterback position for Oklahoma, and so you got as good as Caleb Williams was, still struggled, obviously, as you would expect as a true freshman, to read defenses and things like that to a certain degree. So obviously, I think his utilization gets ratcheted up quite a bit this year. I think he's got a lot more targets. He's a guy that can that certainly can thrive in Levy's system. And then when you go back to the running back position, I think it kind of tells the story, Mark, of where Oklahoma's at, and tons of competition that you'll see in the fall camp. I think coming into fall camp, I think it's fairly consistently thought of that Eric Gray is probably going to be the RB1, but then you've got some other guys that have that opportunity. I think where you look at Marcus Major, I think he's a much better in between the tackles runner than what Eric Gray is. But I think Eric Gray will be utilized in a much different way this year. See him catching balls out of the backfield much more. So where you may see a Javante Barnes or even a Marcus Major may have more yards in terms of rushing this year. I think when you look at total yards, certainly Eric Gray will have that as the best running back out of the backfield. Wouldn't be surprised if he's anywhere between 25 and 35 catches this year from that running back position, because Levy will get that ball out to those guys out in space.
So I'm going to state the obvious in response to Web Security's question about who is the highest ceiling. So you got to think it's either Javante Barnes or Gavin Sawchuk. So unless you're going to uncover something else between those two, which route would you go?
Yeah, I would. That's a good question. Just from a longevity perspective in their career, I think Barnes is much more equipped to be able to have that higher ceiling this year. Now, next year, we'll see. But I think Barnes is putting himself in a much better position to be able to have that higher potential this year. Both of them are very, very highly recruited kids, right? When you look at Sawchuk, one of the best running backs in the country, both are top 10 running backs in the country in that 2022 class. So I think you give Barnes the benefit of the doubt based on his body type. I think he's physically ready to play this year. And the fact that, with him having a full off-season conditioning, or not really off-season, but spring to summer, strength and conditioning program under Schmitty, it'll be interesting to see how he progresses. I've heard a lot of good things, about what he's been doing. It's kind of some of the 7-on-7 stuff through the summer. So we'll see how that translates to the fall. But I think right now I would give Barnes as just a slight edge in terms of longevity and through the rest of his career.
And of course, these guys will do little without blocking up front. So those are the guys that make it all work. Jason and I have run down position groups for the past 3 weeks with quarterback, running back, wide receivers. If you've missed those videos, please check out the previous week's shows.